If you are someone trying to buy a house in Canada, fear not, the government is here to save you. You're going to owe nothing and be happy about it. Hey everybody, welcome back to Bald Prairie Real Estate. My name is Matthew Pfeifer, real estate agent in Regina. That's my trusted assistant, Matilda. This is the weekly news recap where I give you my thoughts and opinions of what I think are the most interesting Canadian real estate related news topics. But of course, we had to start off with another one of my terrible bad dad jokes. What do you call a dog that does magic tricks? A 𝗲𝗲𝗶𝗳𝗲𝗃. If you have a terrible joke I can use in a future episode, put it in the comments below. Let's get into this week's news. Before we get into this week's news, I do want to talk about a topic that is in the news. And actually, when my video editor and I were planning this week's news recap video here, the plan was originally just to do a video exclusively on this topic and not do a regular news update. And I started recording the video and I simply couldn't continue recording. I felt sick to my stomach and I had to stop. I still want to talk about it here with you guys because it's an important topic. But I won't be doing the longer video that I had planned here. So if you've been keeping up with the news, you've probably heard at this point that a Toronto real estate agent was murdered at a showing. And unfortunately, this is a story that keeps repeating itself over and over again. And it's almost the same story every single time. Almost exclusively, it's a female real estate agent gets called, and what we call a sign call from somebody they don't know. They go to show a property and they're murdered in the property. We, in fact, have a protocol in our office that if an agent feels like they're in a situation where they're uncomfortable or maybe they're trapped in a situation, they make a phone call to anybody else in the office or any of our office management, and we have a code phrase. And if that is uttered, immediately that person is going to go and help them as well as call the police. And it bothers me an awful lot that this is something that we actually have to have as a protocol in our office. But it's also stories like this why real estate agents are screening you as a buyer. If you phone them out of the blue and they don't know who you are, and they're asking questions like, can I have a copy of your ID, please? Can you send me your pre-approval letter? Maybe they're in the showing and they're taking a call in the middle of the showing. You might think that's rather rude of them. It's probably a check-in call. And it's because of situations like this why we have that. I don't meet buyers at houses if I haven't met them. I'll almost always say, let's go have a coffee first. It's because I don't know who these people are. And I also do that not only for my own safety, but the safety of my sellers and their home. I say to them when I put their house up for sale, if I get a call from somebody that I don't know that wants to book a showing, I'm going to quiz them. I'm going to screen them and figure out who they are. And if I don't feel comfortable taking that person to my own personal house, I won't take them into the seller's house either. I'm, I guess, fortunate enough that I don't have those same concerns about meeting somebody in a house. I have them more for the safety of the sellers, my own personal safety. Maybe that's something I should take a long and serious thought about here. But this is just an unfortunate reality of real estate, that real estate agents get murdered in houses. And it's just something that, like I said, I was going to do a longer video on, and I couldn't continue to talk about it. So that's that topic, and I want to get into the rest of this week's news. Next, let's talk about the government's plan to deal with temporary foreign workers and its impact on the Canadian real estate market. This is a topic, of course, I've talked about a lot in the recent months, year, I guess. I don't know how long I've been talking about it, but temporary foreign workers, we've seen a massive spike in temporary foreign workers in Canada, and that, of course, has put a substantial strain on our housing market, most specifically on the rental market. Now, the government has finally seemed to have realized that this is a significant issue for the country, but also for voters. Amazing how all of a sudden, when you're behind in the polls and it's a hot issue for the voters, that this is also a priority for the government.
We like to say people kind, not necessarily mankind.
Unfortunately, it wasn't a priority many years ago. So the plan is to provide caps on foreign workers, and a lot of these are some good ideas. You know, if they have an unemployment rate that's at certain levels, they're not going to allow temporary foreign workers, and a whole bunch of other things. Again, this topic would stray far too into economics and politics. I just want to talk specifically about the impact this is going to have on our real estate market. Real quick pause here. If you're thinking about buying a house in Regina, obviously I'd love to help you out. But if you're somewhere else in Canada, don't worry. I can get you set up with a perfect real estate agent that I'll handpick for you. If you check out the description of this video, you're going to see a link to my calendar where you can book me in for an agent recommendation consultation. I'll give you a call, learn about what's important to you in a house, in a real estate agent, and I'll get you set up with that perfect agent in your market. And now let's get back to the video. When you take this kind of just looking, kind of top down to this sounds like a great idea. But let's get into some details here. So the government is not going to kick people out. They're, of course, hopefully going to reduce the number of people coming in, so that will slowly help make things better. As those visas run out, then those people will have to go home. If they're sent home, if they don't leave, of course, that creates another problem. But for the most part, these are people already here in Canada that still need housing. That doesn't change. They still need a place to live. That continues to put pressure on the housing market and all the other services in Canada. But also, again, if they're going to cap this as a percentage of the population, well, you can reduce the number of people coming in, or you can increase the population. And that seems to be more the direction the government wants to go here. If you just increase the number of people that are Canadian citizens or permanent residents, well, then your percentage of the country that is temporary foreign workers will naturally decrease. And unfortunately, that seems to be more the way the government wants to go than actually kicking people out or substantially reducing down the numbers. Now, they are at least talking about reducing numbers back to essentially pre-pandemic levels, which would be much better for the country as a whole, and especially our housing market. Let's get up to speed on this week's best mortgage rates. Once again, a relatively quiet week when it comes to mortgage rates. I have made one change. A viewer found an error, so I'm going to make that change there. But remember that the lowest mortgage rate is not always the best mortgage available. There's far more to a mortgage than just the interest rate. So please don't just look at the interest rate and say this is the best mortgage for me. As well, not all mortgages are available nationally. Citadel, I've talked about a lot, continues to have some of the lowest mortgage rates available, and they are only available in Ontario. So let's dive into it. Starting off with insured mortgages, the best 3-year fixed rate was through Radius at 4.59%. The best 5-year available was 4.44, available with MCAP. 10-year, 5.6% with Citadel. Not many other companies offer 10-year mortgages. When it comes to variable rate mortgages, you of course have two options. When it comes to the adjustable rate mortgages, the best one is 5.65. That was available through Strive. And the best fixed payment variable rate mortgage was 5.55, available through Manulife. Now getting into the uninsurable mortgages, the best 3-year I could find was 5.09% through CMLS. The best 5-year fixed was 4.79%. That was through Manulife, and that is a slight drop from last week. The best 10-year, Citadel once again at 5.6%. When it comes to the variable rate mortgages, the best adjustable rate mortgage was 6.2%, available through MCAP and CMLS. And the best 5-year static variable was 5.99%, available through TD. When it comes to the big 5 banks, these are the best 5-year fixed insurable mortgages that I could find. CIBC, 4.64%, that's unchanged. Bank of Montreal, 4.84%, also unchanged. TD Bank, 4.69%, slightly lower than last week. Scotiabank, 4.89%. No, it's not a big drop from the previous week. The website I was using to pull the best bank rates available was not showing Scotiabank's discount rate, so I fixed that now, and a viewer pointed out. Thank you very much for that. RBC has the worst rate at 4.94%. That is also unchanged from last week. Doing the quick comparison on how much a $500,000 house would cost you, well, with the lowest rate available, it'd be about $2,700 a month, and the highest rate would cost you around $2,900 a month, so a $200 a month difference, which, if my calculations are right, buys you about 25 of those awful Tim Hortons pizzas. Why is Tim Hortons doing pizzas these days? Now let's talk about how the cottage country has become a buyer's market across Canada. If you are out looking to buy a cottage, you have probably one of the best buyer's markets we've seen in a very long time. Of course, there's always going to be subsets of the country where some pockets are hotter than others, but kind of as a whole, we're seeing a very sluggish cottage market in the country, and we'll talk about why here. So right now, we're seeing not a lot of cottages selling and a ton up for sale, and we have to back up to, well, 2020, because that's kind of where this story starts. Nobody can go out. Nobody can spend any money, so they have some extra money in their pocket and they're frustrated being stuck at home, and what do? Well, they've been thinking about buying a cottage for a while. Why not now? I've got that extra money and mortgage rates are very low. So we saw a ton of cottages being sold through 2021. It was one of the most challenging buyer's markets for cottages we'd seen in a very long time. And then the world opened back up and people realized that, hey, having a cottage also has its downsides. You have 2 sets of grass to maintain, 2 full houses to maintain and clean. You've got to shut it down in the winter if it's a seasonal cottage. Well, that wasn't quite as much fun and a whole lot more work than I thought it was going to be. And we've seen a lot of cottages being put back up for sale. And of course, We've seen interest rates go up. Now that cottage is less affordable. If somebody's house has become less affordable, they have to renew those higher mortgage rates. We have less money to spend because everything got a lot more expensive. Well, what are you going to do? Get rid of the expenses that are easiest to get rid of. And getting rid of that cottage is a pretty attractive one for a lot of people. So we now have a whole lot of cottages for sale. I can say when I've been out at the start of this year, I was looking for cottages for a few different buyers, and there was a ton of options to look at. A lot of them weren't very good and a lot of them were overpriced, but lots of choices to choose from. So if you're out looking for a cottage right now, this is probably one of the better markets you've had for a while. Now let's talk about the Liberal government's fantastic plan to get more affordable housing in the Canadian real estate market. So again, I've beat up the Liberals quite a bit on their housing policy announcements, and well, they keep repeating the same mistakes and giving me ammunition for things to talk about here. And what I think is really funny is that this is not a new topic, and it's also not something the government isn't already doing. That is, selling off or providing crown land to build housing. This has been done for quite a while in Canada. It's not a new thing. Of course, it was in the election platforms for the Conservatives in 2019 and 2021, some variations of it. Essentially, they wanted to sell off old crown land or downtown buildings, have them convert it into housing projects. And actually, the Liberals had talked about this as well in 2021. And it's interesting now that, well, they can't go back and say that. Obviously, you can't, as a political party, say the opposition's idea was a good one. So now they're saying that the idea of selling off this land to developers is a bad one because you don't want to sell it to those greedy developers and make a quick buck.
The Conservative Party leader wants to sell it all off to make a quick buck. That does nothing for you.
The big difference, of course, is that the Conservatives want to sell the land off to developers to have them go out and build projects, and the Liberals want to have this as leased land, long-term leases, they're saying, which is 99-year leases. Of course, that adds a whole additional layer of complications. You know, that's not maybe a problem today, but what happens in close to 100 years when those leases are running out? Obviously, you have to go out and renew it. And yes, people build on leased land all the time. We see it a lot. But it adds an additional layer of complication that really doesn't need to be there. A lot fewer lenders will lend for leased land, whether it's a builder trying to go out and build projects or you as the end user wanting to purchase a property. Go out, talk to your bank and ask them about a property that's on leased land. There's fewer lenders that will even look at that in the first place, and the ones that do generally have higher interest rates. So the government's running around saying that this is fantastic, but really it's an additional layer of complication and will probably end up making things more expensive and slow the process down even more. So that on a whole is not great, but really this to me is, again, very typical of this government, kind of a fluff piece announcement to say, look, we're doing something, when this is not a shovel-ready project. This is a handful of sites they have picked that they're asking for proposals to get things built. So this isn't buildings that are going up tomorrow that you can buy next year. And this is not hundreds or thousands of units being added to the housing market. It's just an announcement that they're planning on doing something more than anything else. And as the saying goes, I see it all over the internet, you will own nothing and you will be happy about it. It seems to be the way the government's approaching this right now. But you know what isn't going to be a fluff piece announcement from the government? This video right here. If you love this video, please give this video a like, leave me a comment in the comment section. We'll love chatting with you guys there. And as always, thanks very much for watching.